listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin. To master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Once you walked in a forest of splendor in which everything you did and everything you thought was aligned. It is possible at this time to begin to return to the old knowledge. Intuitive healer and manifestor Julia Griffin is here to talk about this unique time in history when all sentient beings, animals, plants, trees, and the earth are intent on creating this change. The wolves awakened her to the most incredible light, which opened gifts and brought knowledge that she longs to share. You are creators, and you were born to be creators of beauty, possibility, and joy. Join Julia on a journey into a beautiful and magical world where amazing possibilities exist. Let us help open the door. The Power of Inspiration and Awakening with Julia Griffin starts right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin, and you're listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, and let us help you find a higher vibration and a new way of thinking about things that will make your whole life better. I have a wonderful guest today. She is Penelope Jean Hayes. She's appeared on television hundreds of times as an expert guest, including Dr. Phil, ABC News, and internationally. She founded the study of Virology, which means contagious energy, for personal and interpersonal betterment. She is the author of the best-selling book, The Magic of Viral Energy, an ancient key to happiness, empowerment, and purpose. An important book, I think. She is the best-selling author in the genre of personal betterment. In 2020, her first book was published, titled The Magic of Viral Energy. That same year, she was granted a U.S. trademark for the term viral energy, which describes the phenomenon of contagious energy and its impact on all aspects of life. Directly following, the first or second book was released and quickly became a #1 bestseller, titled Due Unto Earth. Penelope has hosted a podcast and radio show and has used her voice for 11 books published worldwide by Blackstone Publishing and available on audio, Amazon, and everywhere audiobooks are sold. In 2021, Due Unto Earth became the #1 best-selling audiobook in its genre. You can find her and find out more about her books and her work at PenelopeJeanHayes.com. Hey, Penelope.
Hi, Julia. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, I'm really glad to be here again.
Oh, we're going to have two topics for all of you who are interested in, different things and a wider worldview. And the first one of those is we're going to talk about why we should go back out into the world and back to work now that 2020 is past. And before we go into that, you may be saying to yourself, well, I'm an introvert, I'm an empath, I can't stand it. Well, we know how you feel. We feel the same way. But we also found that you do feel better if you can engage the happier parts of the outer world, and that it does improve your life. And you're doing speeches and presentations about this.
I am. And it was really need driven. I speak about viral energy in so many different aspects for personal development and for relationships. But I started getting contacted by employers who were like, what can we do for our employees to encourage them to come back into the office, to come back into the workplace? And my first reaction was sort of like yours. I'm like, now, do we really, do people really want this? And so I had to, before accepting the challenge, I had to think about this from this, virology perspective to say, how is this? And it's very obvious why this is a good thing in many ways. And for some people, maybe they'll never go back into the office or back into the workplace. So it's not necessarily for everyone in every stage of life, but I have a top 12 reasons why you want to go back to the office. And I really do believe that it's true. And we'll get into all of the details of it. And there's actually 6 I'd like to share with you today if we have time. 6 of the top 12. But a lot of it has to do with just this, creative synergy that we have when we're working together with people in a physical environment. And with viral energy, what that really is the contagious nature of energy in social interactions and the environments all around us. So it's like this osmosis, Julia, where you're just like marinating in an energy. So if somebody walked into my room right now, their energy contributes to this room, and my energy contributes to them and to their experiences, and maybe even to their mood. So that's just on the surface, but I don't want to get ahead of things. But you see where we're
So
going.
I think that part of the fear that people have is like really icky energy from other people. And for a while, I think that was true when everybody was sick and there was such a fear. But there's also a thing in metaphysics that what you're encountering in the outer world is some reflection of yourself. And one of the things we're going to talk about is how do we make that reflection from the outer world better?
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because we do want to like have our deflector shields up per se. So our energy field is like, some people use the word aura. So we have this energy field that extends slightly beyond our physical body, and it actually is semi-permeable. So it's not just this like capsule that's, separate from the rest of the world. It flows. The energy within us, this frequency flows out of us. And just like a cell phone works, that's how our energy works. It's these unseeable frequencies in the world. And so we want to protect ourselves from those negative energies that you mentioned. So sometimes people are just, shedding negativity in their life, or there's the fear, and you mentioned that as well. So just by our awareness, we sort of bring our deflector shields up. Now, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't interact with people because there might be negative energies out there. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We have to develop ourselves, fortify ourselves until we get to this point of awareness about these things. And you can, protect yourself from that. And sometimes it's just by saying, you know what? No, I don't accept that. Whatever that is, to say, I don't accept that, and to be able to stand up for yourself in a way. So there's a lot of different ways that we mitigate and we protect ourselves from negative energies, but the benefits of being around positive energies, light energies really, are just so much stronger, so much more important.
Well, I do think too, when you encounter good people who are in the world, that it reassures you. You remember, like, oh, there is this goodness in the world. There's more than shielding myself. And even for people who are at home working online and wanting to go out later, you can do a lot of things. Like one fun thing is parking space where you want it, which for me, I like to walk. So I don't want it in the front, I want it in the back. But no grocery lines. Tons of people can be in the store, but there's no one on my aisle, when I'm getting things. And then that puts me in a happier state. And I imagine you could do it with anything.
Sure. So through your visualization, you're manifesting what you want. And in this example, you want a world that you're, free and clear. The aisle is free for you of the heavy energies. And so you're, very highly evolved with your manifestation skills. I know that about you. And for other people, they may not be as practiced with it, but that's exactly what it is. It's practicing these abilities to be ultra aware that we're not even talking about anything like woohoo and out there. We're talking about something that works exactly the same way as your cell phone. And it's a real fact in the world that we're picking up energies and we're giving off energies. So what are you missing out on when you're only doing everything through Zoom?
Well, I think we need more energy than what's in our bubble, as nice as my bubble is.
Well, and that's so here's the book, The Magic of Viral Energy. I'll share the cover with those who are watching through the webinar. And one of the things, I have a chapter that speaks to the point that you just made, and that's circulation. So any resource that doesn't circulate will stagnate. Think about it. Money. If it doesn't circulate in the market, it will stagnate. It will be worth less over time. Blood, if it doesn't circulate, it stagnates. Water in a pond, it will stagnate if it doesn't circulate. And so that's actually the reference that's really applicable to this. So energy that doesn't circulate out there in the world, making things happen, meeting people at the water cooler, going out after work, energy that doesn't circulate will stagnate. So you do have this limited pool of your own creative ideas. And without that exposure to other people, and it may not be that it's their ideas, but something about them, something they said, one word sparked your own idea. and
Or just
create.
their energy field as a catalyst. Even
Absolutely.
when even when people are thinking the wrong way, you can say, "Oh, let me think the different way."
Right. So think of two hurricanes colliding. We've seen these movies, the perfect storm, and it's the power of one thing and the power of another thing. So these are two people. One of them's you. And as they collide, that's like the mega, the superstorm, the perfect storm. And in all the best ways, that's what's happening with your creativity, with your career, when you're allowing yourself to bring new water into your pond.
Mm.
To circulate with people and just get back out there in life.
So I know one reason that you said, and I have to agree with you, you said it's nice to put on nice clothes sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you feel the same, but I used to wear high heels to an office every day. And then, with the couple of years of COVID, it's like it physically changes you to where you don't really feel comfortable putting high heels on anymore. And you're like out of practice and your calf muscles aren't as great. Don't have that nice indentation that we women get from wearing high heels, all of these things. And the clothes don't fit because we're used to wearing,
Loose
sweats,
clothes,
yoga pants and loose fitting clothes. And maybe we're on a Zoom meeting and our dress isn't even fully zipped up in the back. So no bueno, my friend, no bueno. Let's get back into feeling good about ourselves. And even people that are introverted and would much prefer, if left alone, to just do everything by Zoom and work from home, they almost benefit the most because they can be very susceptible to depression and mental and emotional health issues by not communing with other people.
Right. So if we really want to grow, it's a wonderful thing to think about that. And I think also, whatever your job is, what job would you like to have and what would you like to encounter? It's an interesting thing to me, but I find it takes a lot of energy to change a negative because you think you've been dumped in it to a positive. But that's part of the work of growth.
Mm-hmm. It's like climbing out of a pit. So you can imagine a ladder, and trying to get back out is not as easy as falling in, right? We can just fall into a depression, fall into an emotional pit. But climbing up sometimes is just one rung at a time. And we have to remember that to kind of go easy on ourselves. So dipping our toe back into the workplace, getting back out into the world again and into these office environments may also be something that we want to do just one rung at a time. So it's not just, get back in there, but it probably would be healthier for you emotionally to get back to the workplace if that's where you started. And also think about all of the benefits that you have when you're working with other people. And, some of my best friends in life I've met working in offices in many different aspects of my career. Some boyfriends that I dated prior to being married, most of them I met through work. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't through a Zoom. It was in person in an office somewhere.
Right. So, we're all different now. So maybe part of going out is finding out how we've changed.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we have a real opportunity here when you speak of change of, what can happen when we restart that engine again. So we were kind of going along, same old in life. And we've had this very long break with the COVID situation, and we're all getting back to, and should we go back to the office? Should we not go back to the office? I think it's time. And we can also sort of like just by re-jumping that motor, that, socialization is really, really good. And I think it's going to bring in a real influx of that fresh new water, that circulation, more than if we, maybe didn't have this break. So sometimes a break is a really good thing. But now, like, think of what exciting things and people and new friends and opportunities and career advancements and promotions are just around the corner when we get back into being in person with people.
I think too, one thing that's good to say is that I'm always meeting good people. Who knows how, but there they are.
Well, and I'm not surprised because you are on frequency with them. So, we hear a lot about the law of attraction, and I'm not sure that many people really understand the law of attraction. And I'm actually going to leave it aside and not talk about the law of attraction, but I want to talk about something a little bit different, and that's viral energy. So it's not necessarily, and this is what people are missing, that you're just attracting by way of sending out a frequency and a like frequency meets your frequency. It's because you are living your life, your presence, your energetic presence, that frequency that is you, is on a certain like strata basically in these energy levels. And I was able to identify through the work that I do in viral 7 strata. Now there could be more, like you could delineate this further and further, but there's 7 main strata that people are operating on, that their presence is on. And so you're in flow in your strata. And so what you're going to do, Julia, is you're just going to be meeting people and encountering people that are in flow in the same strata. So it's not that it's just law of attraction. It's, think of it in this way, that you are already operating at a frequency that is in this river per se, with everything else in that river. So if salmon's in your river and bass is not in your river, you're not going to get bass, you're going to get salmon. And
Right.
maybe bass, maybe you think about like a catfish and bottom feeders. They might be on a different strata than you.
Right.
And not to say you can't have bad days, certainly, but as a general rule, you're operating on a frequency in which you are in flow with similar things. And so I'm not surprised.
I was going to point this out for people who say, I'm a good person, why am I not there? I noticed that I was irritated by people who couldn't drive. You know how there's always one person that's trying to hit you and you've got to stop and let them by. And I was irritated when people in stores weren't knowledgeable or doing what they were supposed to do. And then I decided, hey, it's my dream of life. I'll just not react anymore. And as soon as I stopped reacting, that's when all the good people came.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's true. And, you can do that practice with anything. I was just talking with a friend the other day who has this ex-husband who's, it's always a problem. There's always a childcare issue. He's very difficult. And she has his contact in her phone as Pinocchio, because it's the running joke amongst our friends that he's a liar, right?
Right.
So when he calls or texts, it comes up as Pinocchio. So she got a suggestion that maybe she could manifest something different than him lying to her all the time, and instead change the contact to, very responsive co-parent. And so now when she sees it's very responsive co-parent, and guess what happened? He started changing. So we do hear these stories and testimonials really of manifestation in that way. Not only do we want to know the reasons why we might want to and choose to go back into a workplace, but employers need advice here on how to attract people back into the workplace. I mean, you can't just change nothing. I mean, we've been quite spoiled working from home. So employers need to get with the program. There's some adjustments that they need to make. And I'll tell this through a short story. So my husband has been working from home also for now. It's sort of been, we're years into this.
Right.
And his boss wanted him to come back to the office because he has such a great energy and everybody loves having him around. He's an executive at the office, and he got really spoiled with being at home. I'm making it way too good for him, Julia. Way too good. We have nice lunches. We can sit by the pool. We've got, the doggy walking around. He can get snoots from the dog while he's, typing and working. So it's just been far too good for him. But what happens in our brain is we make an association. So the association has been made between work and home. So how do you uncouple that? There were some interesting studies done where people were, when they were sleeping, they infused the smell of cigarettes. These are people who were smokers. So they infused the smell of cigarettes while they were in a sleep state. And then directly following the cigarettes, they coupled it with the smell of rotten food, rotten eggs. And what it did inside the brain when they woke up after doing this therapy for a short period of time, they smoked less. And some of them even quit smoking altogether because the brain made a new association between the cigarettes and this really foul smell and experience. Same thing has happened in our brains. If we have a good home environment and we enjoy being at home, or it's just our peaceful place, and it's really super cozy and we can stay in our pajamas from the waist down all day, the association has been made now over a period of a few years that work can equal this happy experience. So to pull that away is literally like ripping a teddy bear from a 2-year-old. What can employers do to make that association at the workplace, at the office? And so the story with my husband is that we did that. So finally, he's back to work, and it's been a few weeks now. And on a Sunday before he was meant to go back on Monday, I went with him to his office. We actually redecorated the office. We put up a couple great paintings that were right from home, pulled from our walls at home, that he loves so much, that really means something to him. And one of them actually is reminiscent of our honeymoon. It's that beautiful spot there in Italy. And together we put these up on his wall, and we reorganized things a little bit. And he had a whiteboard there, and I put a little heart, and he'll always know that little tiny heart in the corner was from me. And you know what he said to me the other day? He's like, you know what? It really feels great. Like, I'm super happy to be back at the office because it kind of feels like home. And I was like, light bulb.
Yeah, that was his association.
The association has been made. So employers need to do their part, and they need to go out of their way. They need to, interview their staff and find out what would make it nicer, what would make it home-like. And I'm sure there's things that we can all think of, but to also, survey the employees and really care what would make that nice for them.
And I think another thing that a lot of employers don't do, I think it's 2 steps. One is seeing the good in whoever you're working with, whether or not you voice it. And the other part is some type of verbal gratitude for what they're doing.
Well, that's it, and there's probably a lot of these nuances that we miss out on by having a Zoom meeting. And then what happens? It gets disconnected. There's no water cooler talk afterwards. There's no bump into the boss in the hallway who says, you know what, that was a really great job that you did in that meeting. Like, that was, the things that so we're probably just missing out on a lot of that, for one thing. But we're really and then guess what happens? We get inundated with emails, text messages. Now it's also, we have Telegram, we have Signal, we have WhatsApp, and our bosses and coworkers are able to contact us through all of these ways to give us follow-up and feedback on these meetings instead of just popping into your office. So people end up feeling inundated, and there's no right to disconnect. We've now, instead of compartmentalizing our work from 9 to 5, if that's what your schedule was, because the work from home, bosses and coworkers feel that they can just contact you through all of these various means constantly. Anytime. And wouldn't we all like to get that balance back?
Yes, definitely.
Well, France has done it. It's called right to disconnect. And I hope the United States adopts that as well. And that is that your boss, your work can't contact you outside of your work hours. If that's early in the morning or late at night or whatever your schedule is, they can't contact you on weekends. If that's a Saturday or Sunday or whatever your days off, nor vacation. And if they have, just an idea that comes to their mind, they have to kind of collect that and then send it to you during work hours. Because, have you ever had that boss, or, well, I guess you're your own boss, and as am I, but I've had a boss in the past, and they will, I know it's the weekend, but, you don't have to look at this until Monday. Don't look at this on the weekend. And well, you already did.
I know.
I'm expecting, my friend to ding me on a text message or an email, or my mother. And when I get that ding, I'm going to look. And if it's my boss or a coworker, now you've already got me out of my weekend mind and into my work mind. And so the damage has already been done. We have a right to disconnect. And I think that in-person time really compartmentalizes, rather than everything's from home. There are no limits, and everything's just sort of free game because you're working from home anyway.
Right. Well, maybe everyone who's going back to work is going to come up with a new set of rules about all the electronics, because electronics are wonderful, but we want them to work for us, not against us.
Well, and that's another one of these things that employers can now do. If you want to incentivize employees to come back, again, you have to do something too. You have to sweeten the deal here for them. And one of those things is, don't wait until a law to be put in place that says that employees have a right to disconnect. Say, you know what, we'd love to have you back in the office. And here's the things that we're going to do. Not only are we going to improve and augment the physical environment so it feels more home-like, we're also going to give you a right to disconnect. And we're going to hold all messages on your private time. And, we're going to now, make these promises to you. So I think that would help.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So it's now time for our break. We've been talking about the real outer world and how we should probably go back into it in one way or another. I'm Julia Griffin at One True Self, onetrueself.com, and I'm here with Penelope Jean Hayes. Her website is penelopejeanhayes.com. And when we come back, we're going to talk about another one of her interests, and that's aliens. So stay tuned. Hey, we're back. I'm Julia Griffin with OneTrueSelf.com, and I'm here with the lovely Penelope Jean Hayes. We just talked about going back into the world and how you're part of that, and the changes that may come, the positive ones, may come from you. So we're going to talk about aliens and the latest information about their presence. Now, Penelope, I know you're working on, is it a documentary that you're doing on aliens?
It's actually a television series, so it's unscripted and it will be episodic. So it's a series called Not Alone.
Well, we're not.
No, we're not.
And
So
I'm just going to skip and say, for anyone who's really gotten into Native American esoterica, or who has talked to people who know about it, the space visitors always come up. So why don't you tell us about the space visitors? The star visitors.
Sure. Yeah. Star people. There's a lot of names for them. Some people call them our ancestors. But you know what? It used to be just so strange if someone believed in aliens or consciousness outside of human consciousness. And now that like gulf between those thoughts are really, really closing because mainstream has started to accept it. And for anyone who doesn't know this, disclosure, alien disclosure by our government already happened. And most people don't know it because it happened very subtly, and that was also by design. So there were New York Times articles in 2006, I believe it was, Julia, and they were like big front page exposés on UFOs, which are now called UAPs. And the government has actually changed the acronym to unidentified, and it used to be aerial phenomena, and now it's unidentified anomalous phenomena. Because they have researched also that they're not just aerial phenomena, but the same craft that fly in the air can seamlessly go into ocean without making a ripple. So anomalous phenomena. And there has been a lot of pilots, Navy pilots, Air Force pilots who have witnessed these phenomena and have reported them. And so this big expose in the New York Times came out. In fact, it's just really, been this domino effect ever since then. It was a very successful article, extremely well written, very well documented. And it actually caused our Senate Intelligence Committee to demand that a whole task force be put together to say, like, what are these? We need to know, this has now gone public. Like, we need to know, what these are. Are they ours? Are they the Russians? Are they, from other planets? And so they asked for a unidentified aerial phenomena task force to be put together, and they were given the task of what is referred to as the 180-day report, which is now come and gone. So they've done the report, which just came out, I think it's almost a year ago to date, actually. I believe it was June of last year that the task force actually, and the task force is part of the Department of Defense, the US Department of Defense. And so they released the report and it was heavily redacted. So the public will never know from that report. The Senate Intelligence Committee will never know from that report what the real information is. But I happen to have a contact who is on this committee for the UAP information, who has given me a lot of behind the scenes information, which has informed a lot of work that I've been doing on consciousness in general. And now in our television series.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the different types of aliens? Aren't there several different types?
Yeah. So when I first started, it was like an education really on all of this. And it's really fascinating. So we've heard of the grays, right? So this is like the short beings, kind of gray skin, very large almond eyes, small mouth, small nose. You could think of like, purpose built, they're probably
reptilian.
More. Well, reptilian is something different. I don't know. Maybe the smooth skin would make someone think that. But actually, what I was told, and this is by someone on the inside, is that these are purpose built biological entities that were actually created for space travel. So you think of individuals, these, races, off-planet races, they actually have created what used to be called EBANS, and that was an acronym for EBANS was an acronym for extraterrestrial biological entities. Well, they've recently changed the acronym, and let me pull it up because it's really interesting. The new acronym is SABERS, and it's synthetic astrobiologically engineered races. So what this means, they're probes. So they are almost like, you can make a breed of dog by mixing this dog with that dog. So now it's like a synthetic breed, but it's still biological. So that's what we have here. And these races, the sabers, which we used to think of as the grays, are created to be probes in the universe. So they're the ones that go out, they investigate, galaxies and solar systems and planets for life. They do visitations. So we're very used to on planet Earth seeing the grays. Like in Roswell, the crash at Roswell was grays.
And I do think that sometimes they appear as humans, but they're not that, going around collecting energy. Measuring water, gathering things, or maybe that's a different group.
Yeah, I mean, they might do that type of scientific probing. I think that we're at a different stage now in our human evolution. And so the visitations from off-planet others are really precipitated by our own consciousness and where our society, our civilization is. So are we being civil to each other is a question. And our use of nuclear weapons has really been the impetus for all alien contact. And, there's a lot of information that is actually out in the public domain that people really just haven't done their research on. There was an incident in France in 1955. Of course, Roswell was 1947. And all of these line up with our use and the proliferation of these weapons of mass destruction. And that's when we started getting visitations in these kind of numbers. So the off-planet others, the ETs, have an interest in curbing our ability or our conscious choice and want to utilize weapons of mass destruction. And while they're not going to really get involved to a certain point, they're not going to interfere in all of our wars and things like that. You just want to say why don't you help us?
I know.
Why don't you
take it away?
Stop this war, this horrible war that's going on? But it's not their job to intervene. But what they will do is intervene when it's a planet destroying event. So if a planet destroying event, if we're on the precipice of that, yes, they will shut down that nuke, and they have. This is plenty of information on record that you could find if you wanted to look into it, that will show how these reactors have just been shut down. And at the same time, there was this craft in the sky, this light in the sky over a military base.
And so then there are other ones that we think might come in the form of angels or higher beings.
So it's interesting to try to disseminate that. And this is what I would refer to as light beings. So again, when looking at the study of consciousness, so consciousness again is on strata, and you could raise your consciousness, elevate your light energy to a point that it's almost like the physical body is just dissolved, and that a being at that level has basically developed to a point of their consciousness and enlightenment to where the physical body is either they can dissolute in and out of physicality, or they're just light beings altogether. So I believe from the research that I've done and the information that I've been given, that that's what we're talking about there. And that could be off-planet others that are just a race from another place that have developed to that level of enlightenment, or it could be ones among us that, the very rare, individual has progressed to that point of basically being in that state. And there's, some famous ones that we know of that, even religions have been made around.
Right. That was what I was curious about.
Yeah.
So they've always been here. I think that's an important point.
It's important. And, probably before us, right? So
Right.
there's, according to my contact in the US government, there are ET bases subterranean, so under oceans and under ocean floors.
Right.
So you have to go through the ocean, under the ocean floor. And this is like predates our human existence on this planet. And you think about ancient cultures of Egypt. And while it seems so long ago for us, it's really, really not in the length of, planet Earth. And look at the technology too in ancient Egypt and the Ark of the Covenant, which wasn't just one machine, it was many. And it was similar to the drawings that people have seen, but it wasn't for the purpose that people think of. It was actually to communicate to off-planet others. And so it was a communication device, similar to how we would have a fax machine or a telephone. It was a communication device which allowed an individual, a human person of the human race, to actually place their head between these birds of this machine. And by dialing the birds, they got an arc, a frequency. And through that frequency, it allowed their brain to do what's called a hemisync. And while jumping out of the confinements of the consciousness that we know, you basically jump time space to other dimensions where you can communicate. It's very similar, again, to how a cell phone works. And if you tried to explain how a cell phone works, it would sound like I'm talking now, and you'd be like, Penelope, that is crazy. But it's really not. And those boxes, the Ark of the Covenant, were lined in gold, but that is it's a protective mechanism. It's for radiation. So one of the things that people are, what we're missing out on as a human race is gold isn't for jewelry. The best use of gold is for protection against radiation.
Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot that we've never even gotten close to. So do you think that they're giving us some messages now, the aliens?
Yeah, they are. And the messages for our environment, the messages for, what we're doing to our home planet here. And it affects us. They're trying to, save us in gentle ways. And that is the message. That's the same message that they've been giving, through every visitation. And it's not just environment. It's like this, how we treat each other, the civility of that.
Evolution.
Yeah. And, they're trying to do it when you touched your head, they're trying to do it through raising of consciousness. So you think about how I always talk to you about viral energy, right? And so viral energy is this contagious nature of energy in space and social interaction, but in that environment around you. So if here's you or here's me, and we're marinating in whatever the energy is in this space around us. So if you bring in a more enlightened form of consciousness, almost like you see like this, you can think of it like a giant crystal ball sitting over here. That you pick up on the frequencies, the light energy frequencies of that crystal. And that's how the consciousness of off-planet others can work through like marinating in this higher consciousness. They're trying to help us evolve, actually.
It's like having a higher connection to a radio station or a television station. If you have the connection, they can pop through and play the program.
That's exactly it. And like, we know that if anybody's listening and watching us right now, it's because they tuned into this channel, and they're not going to get another channel. They're just going to get Julia Griffin because that's what they tuned into. And it's the same thing. So as we raise our own consciousness, we have the ability to be on like frequency with and connect with that particular channel of what those messages are.
I just had a thought, and I don't know if it's something or that you've thought about, but when the ages are changing as they are now, from Pisces to Aquarius, they say it's like a wheel that has openings in it, but they're closed. But when it's between the ages, when it turns, all the little holes open up. So we get a dispensation of light. And I just suddenly thought, I bet that's when the aliens make their appearance periodically, is when those holes are there between the ages.
Well, I think that it would be like the numbers of frequency would be amplified at certain times when the portals align, when the stars align, type of a thing. And that, you have your absolutely fantastic newsletter. For anyone who's not signed up to Julia Griffin's newsletter, you have to. And you send out your newsletter when you have the full moon or the new moon. and the wisdom within these newsletters is fantastic. But the point there is that the full moon or the new moon is another one of these portals, right? So it's
Right.
like the stars aligning and the moon aligning, and there are frequencies that are dialed and tuned at that time. So yes, it makes perfect sense that there would be an amplification of such contact.
Which is why I write them at that time, because they're different energetic messages for those two phases of the moon that everyone as a whole is picking up on. You might not know what I'm saying, or you might know exactly what I'm saying, but you have an opportunity to receive more of that information.
Absolutely. And if you're not sure and you don't know much about it, you can just go moon bathe. And that's just if there's a full moon, try to get out there, just sit in a lawn chair and just be in the presence of that full moon and do some moon bathing and just see what it does to your energy frequency. It's going to feel really nice and chill and mellow, and it's going to feel like you just did a big long meditation, but it's a very healthy thing to do, and try it and see what you think.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So for people who want to know more about aliens, when is your show going to come on so we can hear about all these wonderful things that you have going on?
Thank you. Well, we don't have a date for that. In fact, right now we're in a creative process. So production hasn't even started. So
Okay.
it's early on, but it's a fun thing to talk about. And everyone wants to know about these things these days. So, it's become very popular in the mainstream media. And we want to, kind of jump on board with that and get our show out as soon as possible. But I don't have a date for you.
Okay, so I was going to say, for people who want to know more, like right now, are there any books or any sources that you would refer them to? Or would you just
Actually, one of my books, believe it or not, so it's up there on the shelf. You can't see it. My book, Do Unto Earth, has quite a lot of this information in it. So do unto, like, UNTO, do unto earth, and it's available anywhere books are sold.
So tell them about PAX and what's in that book.
Yeah, so PAX is a enlightened, I think that different people could think of PAX in different ways. And I will say that I was contacted to write this book with PAX through a channel. And that channel channels, an entity who gave us the name PAX when we started writing the book, because that's not the name that was adopted prior to that. And it's this huge, very thick book of any question that I ever had. So as a journalist, I have a lot of questions and I have a lot of insight about the environment, and was able to ask some very insightful questions just based on like how this information could help your personal life, your relationships, and then the planet itself. And so the Do Unto Earth book goes through all of that. And so PAX to me would be like a spirit group, a soul group. Some people that might read New Thought might have heard of Abraham, another spirit group. But I think that the more that I've learned about ETs and off-planet others, I think it's very plausible to me that PAX is a consciousness that is enlightened to the human consciousness and tasked with helping us with this type of information. And this is exactly how that contact is done, in these subtle ways through empaths.
Well, it also has all of this, a lot of earth energy to me. Like this spirit is very much into the earth spirit and how the earth spirit and the human spirit can work together, even though it does talk about aliens, and it's fascinating what it says. But to me, there's a feeling of love for earth.
There must be, or I can't imagine why they would spend their time making contact through, an empath and putting that person together with an author who had the ability and the connections to write the book and get it published. And it went to #1 bestseller. I think that there must be a love for Earth, a message specifically for Earth. And I don't know if that was, I asked the question, PAX, were you from Earth at one time? And the answer was no. But I would imagine that if it's an ethereal presence, they wouldn't necessarily be able to be described as being from the physicality of a physical terrain. So, but a love, absolutely.
And that's one of the more interesting things to me, is that on a higher level, aliens seem, and if you have any kind of universal or religious experience, the major message is you're loved.
It is.
And the planet is loved.
Sure. And there's been like so much, it needs to be said, there's been so much fear built around this alien topic, from movies that have led to our belief system that, there's evil aliens. But when you just look at the facts and separate what was government sponsored alien abductions, government sponsored cow mutilations, these are all what's called counterintelligence. And they were programs run to basically put out a narrative opposite to what the truth is, so that people would have an inborn fear of aliens. Even the Phoenix Lights was a government experiment. Basically, it was a massive hologram. And so if somebody can say, well, the Phoenix Lights weren't real because the reflection of the such and such, and we saw this, and there have been this debunking that goes on with all of these things, or that abduction isn't real because I can debunk it. Well, that was the idea. So the idea was that if you can debunk 40% or 50% of these encounters, then people as a collective in our culture would just say, well, aliens aren't real. And that is a very successful campaign that was launched after Roswell to do exactly that. Because if you have the power, what it really is the technology. So they reverse engineered the crafts, plural, that crashed at Roswell, crashed because they took them down. You can't imagine a vehicle coming from another galaxy and then crashing as it's, entering Earth atmosphere. It doesn't really make sense. But we, as our military, reverse engineered that technology. So if you have the technology for travel at a travel that we can't even understand, travel at speeds that we don't even know that our government now has that technology. If you've heard of the Tic Tacs, they're ours. So separating what are the, the real alien crafts from the government sponsored, government produced from those projects of reverse engineering, you start to see the difference between those two. But they don't want the public to know that they have that technology. One, because of our enemies from other countries. And two, because it starts to disappear and dissolve a whole structure when you think oh my gosh, aliens are real. What does that mean about our government being at the top of the pyramid in our
It's
structure?
a belief structure.
Who's our boss now? And religion,
Yeah.
you think about how it puts into question. So a decision was made that we're not going to tell them, but something has changed recently. And that's why the government has been doing this soft disclosure, allowing these articles to be placed in the New York Times. There's another one coming out any second now in the Washington Post. In fact, by the time this airs, that article will be out. And you'll see how this isn't just because somebody got away with something. This is all by design. And the design is to trickle out the information so it's not a shock, because it's not up to us anymore or our governments if our people will know about this. So now they have to kind of trickle out the disclosure.
Right. Well, that's kind of exciting, I think.
It is exciting. I mean, I think that it's exciting in a lot of ways. You think about the power that we can take back when we understand that, there's more to life and to consciousness than we thought. You think about the same technology that allows travel at these, and I'm not going to say faster than the speed of light, because it actually works differently than that. It's more through holes and white holes. And there's a anti-gravity aspect when you're pulling into a planet, like pulling into a parking spot.
It goes through those tunnels.
You're going to use anti-gravity, and you're going to use that gravitational force, which is the Earth in this case, for that type of landing. So there's different technologies. That same technology that allows for intergalactic travel is also the same technology that could be a planet killer. So it's this, whether it's the ETs or our government, there's this sort of thought of, are they ready for it? In the wrong hands, what would it do? Well, it'd be a big problem.
Yeah.
Right. So now you think about, why would ETs have an interest in raising our consciousness? Because when we have an elevated consciousness, we don't want to war with each other, hurt
right.
animals in mass production of food. We don't want to use these weapons against each other, we could eliminate the use of fossil fuels with the technology that our government has right now.
Right.
But yet we're still in the dark.
It's a perception of harmony that would rather manipulate than let us move into harmony.
But we can overpower that. It's like the consumer drives a market. We, the masses, can drive this market. So if we can elevate our consciousness to a level where the ETs will allow us into, because it's like gears clicking. When our consciousness raised to the point that we're basically able to handle the information, it clicks, the door opens. And we have access to this like hall of records. You know, the ETs would be like, okay, they're ready. Let's help them with this technology. And so you think about how our world can change, and we can stop the decimation of our planet through environmental factors if we had that technology. So project number 1 is to raise our consciousness.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being with me. And for those of you who are listening, my show comes on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month. I've been with Penelope Jean Hayes. She's a fascinating person. Check out her website at PenelopeJeanHayes.com. I'm at One True Self, ONETrueSelf.com. And please sign up for my newsletter and learn more about what I'm doing, maybe even about what you're thinking or creating. Because I really think that awareness is the thing that will change the planet in the way that we all want. So thank you for being with us, and namaste. And thank you again, Penelope.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin, to master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Join us next time as Julia takes us deeper into the memory of the moments of light where transcendence and enlightenment emerge. The memory of the jewel of consciousness is always lived within you, to tap into waves of energy and create huge changes by imagining the beauty of the vision and desires that are hidden in the heart. Learn to find your way back to nature, beauty, and your own heart, which holds the secrets of your existence and future. To discover more about Julia's adventures, animal communication, and the teachings she brings to every show, visit OneTrueSelf.com. That's OneTrueSelf.com. That's ONE TrueSelf.com.